Recap. Alchemy, Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 1137. The winds of the heavens howled, as though sensing the rise of a storm that could shake the very firmament itself. Before all eyes stood a woman whose brilliance rivaled the brightest stars of her generation. Gan Shiyun, a prodigy whose name resounded across the majestic heaven sect. She was no weaker than Xiao Sisi or Xia Wui, and the strength she carried within her slender frame had already climbed to 6 stars beyond the limits of her cultivation tier. At the pinnacle of the mountain river tier, her power did not merely reach the peak, it transcended it. How terrifying was such a force. In that instant, her whip lashed forth. Swoosh! The air screamed. Winds twisted, clouds churned, and the heavens themselves seemed to tear open beneath the force of her strike. It was as if the sky would be ripped apart by that single blow. She was different. Completely different. Even Fu Liangye, himself a seed-level genius, was but a candle before her blazing sun. His cultivation was still too shallow. His brilliance, though real, was not yet refined enough to stand beside hers. But Ling Han merely watched. He knew clearly, 2 years ago, he would have needed to rely on the toughness of his body alone to endure such an attack. Back then, this whip would have been something he could only withstand, not defy. But now? A faint smile touched his lips. He raised his hand casually, 2 fingers extended. Pa! The heavens seemed to freeze. The whip, capable of tearing apart storms and rending clouds, was caught effortlessly between those 2 fingers. Silence fell like a blade. Pooh! Countless spectators nearly spat out their tongues in disbelief. Gan Shiyun, a seed of the majestic heaven sect. A supreme existence at the peak of the mountain river tier, someone who should have been invincible within her realm. And yet, her full-powered strike had been halted by 2 fingers, not blocked, not resisted, caught. And the youth who did so stood there as if he had yet to exert even a fraction of his strength. What kind of monstrous gap was this? Ganxian's pupils shrank violently. A chill, colder than winter frost, crept into her heart. How? How can this be? Her thoughts trembled. He didn't use any secret technique. There was no divine art, no hidden method. He relied purely on his own strength. That meant only one thing. His power far exceeded hers. And more than that, his body was terrifying beyond reason. To catch a god tool with bare fingers, even someone stronger would suffer injury. That was an unbreakable law of cultivation. And yet he stood unharmed. Could such a being truly exist? If he did, why was he not a seed of the majestic heaven sect? Ling Han released the whip as though it were nothing more than a strand of grass. His voice was calm, almost indifferent. One shouldn't be too domineering, he said. Showing kindness to others is also leaving a path of retreat for oneself. Then he turned. His gaze softened. Facing Hu Feiyun, he smiled gently. Ninth King, there's a letter for you. Hu Feiyun blinked, her expression dazed as always. She accepted the letter, her movements slow and almost absent-minded. Yet as her eyes scanned the contents, her confusion deepened. Big sister, sent you here to become my follower? She asked, tilting her head. Ling Han nodded. That's right. Boom, the words struck like thunder. Everyone present froze. A man who could casually intercept Gan Shiyun's full-powered strike was here. To become a follower? This was beyond absurd. People longed to become followers of seeds because they lacked the talent to stand among them as equals. It was a path chosen out of necessity, not pride. But this man? He clearly possessed the qualifications of a seed-level disciple. Even if he had missed the recruitment period, what of it? 100 years was nothing to an immortal. Why would such a figure willingly lower himself? The crowd could not comprehend it. Their gazes shifted to Hu Feiyun, filled with envy, disbelief, and even jealousy. With such a powerful follower, her position within the sect would soar to unimaginable heights. And yet, who are you? Hu Feiyun asked, still looking slightly muddled. Ling Han chuckled softly. Hanlin. Hanlin, Hanlin. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Like a veil lifting, her usual dazed air vanished in an instant. Ling Han! A bright smile bloomed across her face, pure, innocent, yet undeniably joyful. Ling Han smiled faintly in return. This woman, though she appeared absent-minded, was anything but foolish. To deduce his identity from a mere alias, her mind was sharp. Detestable! A furious voice shattered the moment. Flames surged. Gan Shiyun's aura erupted like a volcano, blazing into existence as divine patterns wove themselves into a fiery domain around her. She stood like a goddess descended from the inferno. Ling Han turned, his expression calm but his tone slightly reproachful. "Hasn't anyone told you," he said, "that interrupting others' conversations is rude?" "That's right," Hu Feiyun chimed in without hesitation, her personality unchanged as ever. Gan Xian's face twisted with rage. These two were mocking her. Within the majestic heaven sect, disciples were forbidden from killing one another. But followers, they held no such protection. No matter how talented he was, if she killed him, it would mean nothing. The cinnabar mark on her forehead glowed. From that point of light, a furnace emerged. The moment it appeared, the air warped. Heat surged in all directions, as if the world itself had been cast into a blazing forge. Crap, that's the Gan clan's goddess furnace. It's a heavenly body tier treasure. It can incinerate all life. No, wait, it's just a replica. The real one remains with the Gan clan. But even so, its power is terrifying. It's nearly at the sun-moon tier. The crowd retreated in panic. A peak mountain river tier seed unleashing such a weapon. This was not something ordinary cultivators could witness up close without risking their lives. Ling Han stepped forward, shielding Hu Feiyun behind him. The Ninth King, curious as ever, leaned her head past his shoulder. "Why is she so angry?" she asked. The surrounding spectators wore strange expressions. Would Gan Xian cough blood from anger upon hearing that? She did not, but her face darkened to an extreme. Boom! The goddess furnace activated. Flames erupted skyward, intertwining into dazzling divine patterns that illuminated the heavens. Roaring flames incinerate the heaven. She roared. She struck the furnace. The lid flew open. A surge of green flame burst forth, rushing toward Ling Han like a tidal wave of destruction. Ling Han responded instantly. An origin power shield enveloped him. His body could endure such flames, but his clothes could not. If he allowed the fire to touch him, he would be reduced to nothing but bare skin. "I really need to get some treasure-grade clothing," he muttered. "It doesn't need to be strong, but it must resist fire and water." "Die!" Gan Xian commanded. She drove the goddess furnace forward. Since the flames alone could not destroy him, she would trap him within and refine him into ash. Wang! The furnace expanded, descending like a mountain. Boom! It slammed into the ground with a deafening crash. Ling Han was gone. He had been swallowed. "Ha ha ha!" Gan Xian laughed wildly. "So what if you're strong?" she sneered. "Inside the goddess furnace, only ashes await you." But then ping! A dent appeared on the furnace lid, a fist-shaped dent. The entire furnace trembled. Peng! Another strike. Then another, and another. Peng, 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 peng! The once perfect furnace twisted and warped, its form collapsing into irregular chaos. The crowd froze. Their jaws dropped so low that even fists could have fit inside. Inside the furnace, Ling Han was not dying, he was fighting. Gan Xian's expression turned frantic. "Refine him!" she shouted desperately. She poured every ounce of her power into the god tool, pushing its divine flames to their absolute limit, trying to erase him from existence. Yet even the other seeds turned pale. What kind of monster is that? He's trapped inside the goddess furnace and still hasn't been refined. He's even full of energy, he's destroying it from the inside. Even if it's not the real goddess furnace, it's still a peak mountain river tier god tool. This is beyond belief. Within that blazing prison, a legend was being forged, and the heavens themselves bore witness. The echoes of impact rang like thunder within a sealed heaven. Peng, peng, peng! Each strike resounded with a force that seemed capable of shaking mountains, and deep within the blazing prison, the once proud goddess furnace was being reduced to a twisted ruin beneath Ling Han's relentless assault. Its form warped, its structure collapsing under repeated blows, until what remained could scarcely be called a furnace at all. At the beginning, Ling Han had still wrapped himself in a veil of origin power, shielding his garments from the furnace's terrifying heat. But once he had been swallowed whole into its fiery depths, he dismissed such trivial protection without hesitation. If his clothes were reduced to ash, then so be it. His body, tempered through countless trials, had already reached the level of 5th-tier godly metal. Even warriors standing at the low extreme of the sun-moon tier would find it almost impossible to leave a mark upon him. With that confidence, he poured every ounce of strength into his fists. At this moment, his two hands were no longer mere flesh and blood. They were divine weapons. Like a pair of fifth-tier god tools, they shimmered with intricate divine patterns, brimming with destructive might capable of shattering the heavens themselves. Huh? With a violent roar, Linghan crushed through one layer of the furnace's inner wall. Yet instead of breaking through completely, another layer of godly metal revealed itself behind it. This furnace had been forged from multiple layers, and upon that newly revealed surface, his gaze sharpened. There, etched into the metal, lay a divine pattern. For a heartbeat, silence replaced fury. Then, ha! Joy surged through him like a rising tide. This is the martial intent of a fire element cultivator, left behind within the forging of this furnace. His eyes gleamed. If I can study this, I can learn from it. In an instant, Linghan ceased his attacks entirely, standing motionless amidst the blazing inferno as he began to analyze the divine pattern before him. The pattern was incomplete, only a fragment exposed. The rest remained hidden deeper within the furnace's inner layers. Then, peng! 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 His fists moved once more, smashing forward with unstoppable force. Layer after layer was battered aside until the full divine pattern revealed itself before his eyes. Only then did he halt once again, sinking into deep contemplation. Thus began a strange rhythm: violence, followed by stillness, destruction, followed by enlightenment. To those outside, it was utterly baffling. What is happening inside? From beyond the furnace, the onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. At times, the furnace trembled violently, as if it would explode at any moment, battered by ferocious strikes. Yet at other times, it fell eerily silent, as though the man within had vanished. Is he resting inside? Humph! Ganxian scoffed, her voice cold and filled with disdain. Who could possibly escape the goddess furnace? Her confidence was unshaken. If this had been the true goddess furnace, even heavenly body tier elites could be refined into nothingness. The others nodded in agreement. From their perspective, Linghan had likely already exhausted himself. It had been far too long since any sound of attack had emerged. Surely, he was nearing his end. Yet, Hu Feiyan tilted her chin upward, her expression brimming with certainty. Humph, Linghan. No, Hanlin will never be refined. In her heart, Linghan stood invincible. There was no exception. Ridiculous, Fu Liangye sneered. He's already trapped inside. How could he possibly escape? Gan Shiyun's lips curled into a cold smile. You say he's not dead? She said mockingly. Then have him make a sound. And as her words faded, ping! A massive dent, shaped like a fist, exploded outward on the furnace's surface. The entire structure shuddered violently. Silence fell. Gan Shiyun and Fu Liangye's expressions darkened instantly. This was humiliation. A slap across their faces, delivered without mercy. Hu Feiyan, unable to contain herself, burst into laughter, clear and bright like silver bells, just as she had said. How could such a furnace possibly restrain Linghan? Inside, Linghan had already finished analyzing the first divine pattern. Without hesitation, he resumed his assault. Another section of godly metal crumbled beneath his fists, revealing yet another hidden pattern. Again, he stopped. Again, he comprehended. With the Black Tower and the reincarnation tree in his possession, one day of understanding was equivalent to a full year of cultivation. His progress was nothing short of terrifying. Soon, the second divine pattern was completely revealed. Linghan memorized it without error, then vanished into the Black Tower, entering beneath the reincarnation tree to accelerate his comprehension. Within his inner world, another flame-patterned divine mark appeared upon his mountains and rivers. Before long, he emerged once more. Peng, peng, peng. The furnace trembled again as the third divine pattern was unveiled. And once more, he began to understand. Outside, the crowd was on the verge of madness. Attack. Silence. Attack. Silence. What is he doing in there? Some believed he was being refined, clinging to life in his final moments. Others believed he might break free, yet each time he stopped, their hopes faltered again. No one could make sense of it. Hours passed. Within that time, Linghan had shattered every inner layer of the goddess furnace. All divine patterns, fully grasped. Yet still, he felt unsatisfied. If only I could study the true goddess furnace, he mused inwardly. But such a treasure belonged to the Gan clan. How could he possibly lay hands upon it? God tools were not mere weapons. They were crystallizations of a cultivator's martial intent, inscribed with their comprehension of the great Dao, manifested as divine patterns. To study such patterns was to study the cultivator themselves. Of course, not every pattern held value, but for one at Ling Han's level, a single glance was enough to determine its worth. And these were worthy. Still, there was nothing left here for him. Ling Han let out a faint sigh. What a pity. Why are there no more divine patterns? These flame-based insights had proven incredibly beneficial, but regret would not keep him here. Peng, peng, peng. Now he unleashed his full power without restraint. Like a furious ape, he tore into the furnace, smashing through its godly metal layers one after another. Though this was merely a replica, it was exquisitely crafted. 9 layers of godly metal, each inscribed with divine patterns. A structure considered nearly indestructible, at least for those in the Mountain River tier. But Ling Han was no ordinary cultivator. His body rivaled 5th-tier godly metal. His strength exceeded 7 stars. His fists rivaled 5th-tier god tools. And so, the goddess furnace fell. Layer by layer by layer. Outside, the spectators had grown used to the intermittent banging, but this time, it did not stop. Boom! A deafening explosion shook the air. From the cracked surface of the furnace, a hand emerged. A massive fissure spread like lightning across its body. Peng! Another blast. The crack widened, and through it, a face appeared, Ling Han. Unharmed, unshaken, untouched. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This was the goddess furnace, and yet it had been smashed open, and the one responsible stood without a single injury. Oh. Ling Han paused mid-motion, about to step out. Then he stopped. Wait a moment. With complete calm, he reached into the black tower, retrieved a set of clothes, and dressed himself. Only then did he resume. With a few casual punches, he expanded the opening further, and just like that, he stepped out. Gan Xian's face twisted. That was the goddess furnace. Even as a replica, it was a treasure of immense value, granted to her as the most outstanding genius of her generation. Yet now, it had been destroyed before her eyes. She could not accept it. Was Ling Han himself a humanoid god tool? Compensate me, she shrieked, her voice sharp with fury. Compensate me for the goddess furnace! Ling Han glanced at her indifferently. Compensate you? He replied calmly. This is my spoils of battle. With a flick of his hand, he stored the shattered remains into the black tower. Though no longer a god tool, the materials remained precious. They could be used to strengthen his divine demon sword. Gan Xian trembled with rage. You? Not only had he destroyed her treasure, he had taken its remains as his own. This was beyond excessive.